hope that someday there's a great big fire and just my films are destroyed.
For decades, Connie Francis was America's sweetheart, a chart-topping icon whose voice lit up jukeboxes and hearts nationwide. But behind the glamour and gold records lay a life of pain, secrets, and survival. Now, through raw and emotional revelations, Connie shares the untold story of her journey, from betrayal and trauma to remarkable resilience. Her experiences include shocking Mafia connections, a harrowing night that left her emotionally shattered, and a long, brave fight to reclaim her life. More than a star, she emerges as one of pop culture's most quietly courageous figures. Join us as we uncover the truth the music industry kept hidden and honor the strength behind the unforgettable voice that defined a generation. While she was once known as America's sweetheart, with a golden voice that powered hits like Who's Sorry Now and Lipstick on Your Collar, her story is one that includes a terrifying incident that almost destroyed her career, connections to the Mafia, and a shocking betrayal that led to a strange adoption. These are but a few of the wild curves her path took before she even settled into politics. And yet, every story began from somewhere, and so we'll go back to the very start, when baby Connie had just come into the world, bright-eyed and ready to write her tale. The start of an extraordinary tale, an exceptional talent nurtured early on. Connie Francis started out life simple as Concetta Rosa Maria Franconero, a girl born into a working-class Italian-American family with an extraordinary voice and a father who believed in her talent with an unmatched intensity. Her journey to stardom was not the result of chance or glamour, but instead a good mix of raw, natural talent, early discipline, and a strict upbringing. She was born on the 12th of December, 1938 in Newark, New Jersey, to George and Ida Franconero. Her parents were second-generation Italian-Americans. Her father, George, worked as a roofing contractor and was known for his strict demeanor. While he looked strict and gruff on the outside, he was filled with passion and love for his daughter within. Shortly after her birth, her family moved to Belleville, New Jersey, a more suburban town not far from Newark. It was here that she spent most of her earliest years, in a modest home that melded the Italian language and the American dream. While they weren't particularly wealthy, they were a close-knit family, and that was perhaps why they quickly noticed Connie's talent early on. This talent didn't just refer to her voice, but also her intelligence. She attended Belleville High School, where she maintained good grades and took a particular interest in language and literature. Still, schooling wasn't her primary focus, as she had her plate full with activities ranging from talent shows, music lessons, and countless rehearsals orchestrated by her father. George Franconero was not a stage father in the typical sense, as he wasn't doing all of this to chase fame or fortune for himself. Instead, he was absolutely sure that his daughter was destined for greatness. From the time she was just 4 years old, he began entering her into local talent competitions, sometimes driving hours to get her to auditions and amateur shows. He enforced discipline, expecting her to practice her music daily. She learned to read music, trained in multiple vocal styles, and even took accordion lessons to broaden her musical foundation. While most girls her age were playing with dolls or roller skating, she was memorizing arias and popular standards. Her father would record her performances on rudimentary equipment and offer his critique to her. Now, for a child that young, it was normal if she often felt overwhelmed by the intense focus and high expectations, but Connie later acknowledged that without his firm hand, she may never have had the stamina or self-belief needed to survive the ruthless entertainment industry. Luckily, this all paid off quickly, as others had finally started to notice what he had seen and believed all along. she had an exceptional voice. By the age of 10, she was already performing on television talent shows, including Star Time, a local New York program that featured young performers. Her appearances on the show caught the attention of big names in the local entertainment scene, and she quickly developed a small but growing fan base. Her earliest performances combined traditional Italian songs with American standards, a masterful blend that showcased her range and her ability to connect emotionally with both worlds. Her voice was warm, crystal clear, and the kind of expressive voice most didn't initially associate with her small frame. What set her apart from other young singers wasn't just her technical skill, but her well-trained emotional intelligence. She could deliver most songs with the depth, control, and grit people usually found in much older performers. By her early teens, she began to experiment with different styles of music, showing a remarkable ability to adapt to the rapidly changing sounds of post-war America. As doo-wop, rhythm and blues, and early rock and roll began to take hold, she ditched traditional styles and quickly found herself a footing in the new generation of sounds and styles. At the age of 12, she began performing under the iconic stage name Connie Francis, a decision pushed for by producers who thought Franconero was too ethnic and difficult to market. While her birth name would remain a part of her identity, adopting a more American-sounding stage name opened doors in an industry that still held biases against immigrant-sounding names. Around this time, she landed a recurring role on Star Time Kids, a variety show with nationwide appeal that aired from 1953 to 1955. This opportunity gave her weekly exposure and allowed her to perform alongside other rising young stars as she solidified her TV image as a wholesome, all-American girl with a world-class voice. Meanwhile, she didn't drop the ball on her studies, despite the growing demands of her singing career, remaining quite the dedicated student. She graduated valedictorian of her class from Belleville High School, after which she was accepted into New York University with the intention of studying medicine, a career she briefly considered before her music career fully took off. Ultimately, she never attended college, choosing instead to follow the path that was already leading her to fame. While her rise to stardom truly began in 1957 with her breakout hit, Who's Sorry Now?, her first studio recordings date back several years earlier. 2 years prior, she recorded a handful of demos that led to a contract with MGM Records, which was big enough to be a major breakthrough for any artist, let alone a teenage girl from New Jersey. These early recordings did not make an immediate splash on the charts, and, for a time, her career stalled. She then continuously recorded several singles that failed commercially, and by 1957, she was in danger of being dropped by her label. Luckily, fate and her father intervened once more as George insisted she record a new version of the 1923 song Who's Sorry Now?, believing that its nostalgic tone could appeal to both teenagers and their parents. Reluctantly, she recorded the song, and it became a massive hit, reaching #1, 4 on the Billboard charts, launching her straight into the spotlight. In the midst of her growing success, her romantic life also took off, an aspect of her life that would heavily influence every other part of her being in the following years. The winding and often cruel paths of love. One of the earliest known hints of romance in her life was with actor Frankie Avalon, a fellow teen idol. The two reportedly dated briefly in the late 1950s, during the height of their pop careers. While their relationship was never really serious, it was the kind of fleeting romance stars constantly on the move got into. The real deal would come much later when her career was starting to pick up. During her rise, she met fellow star Bobby Darin, and their shared creative bond quickly turned into a passionate but complicated romance. This was perhaps the most significant and tragic love story in Connie Francis's life. The two met in the late 1950s when they were both young artists trying to break through in the music industry. Bobby was a charismatic singer and songwriter, and he collaborated with Connie early in her career, helping her arrange some of her songs and sharing a strong bond with her. Their connection quickly grew into something more than professional, as it spiraled towards being romantic. She had repeatedly referred to him as the love of her life, and their chemistry was there for all to see. Unfortunately, that didn't include her father. He strongly disapproved of him, reportedly believing him to be unworthy of his daughter and a distraction from her career. In fact, his influence over her early life was so extensive that he practically controlled even her romantic life. He closely monitored her relationships, and it was well known that he disapproved of most of the young men who showed interest in his daughter. While his intentions may have been born from protectiveness, his interference would have long-term emotional effects on her. In one of the most painful decisions of her life, she chose to obey her father's wishes and ended the relationship with him. It was a decision she would later describe as her biggest regret. Not long afterward, Bobby married actress Sandra Dee in 1960, a marriage that shocked and devastated Connie. In her autobiography and in interviews, she often expressed sorrow over what could have been. Even years later, her voice would crack with emotion when speaking about Bobby. His untimely death in 1973 only deepened the sorrow and finality surrounding their story. In many ways, Bobby Darin remained the one who got away, the man whose absence haunted her more than any of her actual marriages. Meanwhile, her music career began to struggle. She collaborated with songwriters Neil Sedaka and Howard Greenfield, trying to recapture her past success. Although she disliked some of their ballads, she skillfully encouraged them to write more upbeat tracks that resonated with her younger fans. Her determination paid off when she heard Stupid Cupid, a song she instantly knew would be a hit. She was right. The song topped the charts and revived her career. With renewed fame, she ventured into acting. In 1960, producers of Where the Boys Are wanted her song for the film, but she went a step further and starred in the movie. Set during spring break in a rowdy beach town, the film showcased her range and energy, proving she was more than just a singer. Then came her first marriage, but compared to her first true love, this was something that could only be described as a political misfire. It was a short-lived union with Dick Canellis, a press agent and former U.S. Marines officer, in 1964. The two had met only a few months earlier, and the marriage seemed hasty, even by Hollywood standards. Her fans were shocked, and friends expressed concern that she barely knew him. The marriage lasted only a few months and was annulled in less than a year. The whirlwind romance had quickly turned sour, with reports of incompatibility and personal differences. Connie later admitted that the decision had been impulsive, and that she hadn't been emotionally prepared for marriage. At this stage, she was still in the prime of her career, and her hectic schedule, combined with lingering emotional wounds from her breakup with Bobby, made it difficult for her to forge stable romantic relationships. In 1971, she married Izzy Marion, a hair salon owner. Unlike her previous marriage, this one was less publicized but even more emotionally complex. In later years, she described it as a marriage of convenience. She admitted that she did not love him, but had hoped the marriage might offer her the domestic peace and stability that she had long sought. Unfortunately, this marriage also unraveled quickly. The couple divorced the following year, and she described the experience as deeply disillusioning. By the early 70s, she was struggling with both depression and the trauma of an earlier assault that would leave permanent scars on her psyche. In 1973, she married Joseph Garzilli, a restaurateur and businessman. This marriage was arguably the most heartfelt and serious of her unions. Unlike her past relationships, this one offered a period of peace and lasted longer. But the year they got married would be the last time she knew true stability. Everything changed on the 8th of November, 1974. While performing in Westbury, New York, she was attacked in her hotel room, an event that left her emotionally and physically broken. Though she attempted to return to music, the trauma deeply affected her and marked the start of a long, painful path toward recovery. That night, at the Howard Johnson Motor Lodge on Long Island, a masked man broke into her room. What began as a robbery quickly became something much worse. She was taken forcefully, bound, and left in terror. The violation robbed her not only of her sense of safety, but also of her joy, her voice, and nearly her life. In later interviews, she shared chilling details. She remembered trying to reason with her attacker, speaking to him not as a monster, but as a troubled man, even revealing her fame in a desperate attempt to save herself. She hoped that the fear of hurting a high-profile figure would stop him from going further. That split-second decision may have spared her life, but it did nothing to protect her from the emotional scars that followed. The aftermath was brutal. Once a vibrant performer, she sank into a deep depression. She filed a lawsuit against the hotel for negligence and won, yet her attacker was never brought to justice. Even worse, those closest to her let her down. Her father, who was once the manager of her entire career, dismissed her as damaged goods. However, in the midst of this emotional wreckage, an unexpected moment of joy occurred. Ironically, it was on the same night she was attacked in her hotel room. She had been going through fan mail, seeking comfort, when one letter from a desperate mother caught her attention. The mother had offered her own baby, convinced that Connie could give the child a better life. Stunned and moved, she tried to call her husband. When he didn't answer, she woke her lawyer in the middle of the night with the words, "I have a baby." At the time, he found her statement strange and truly thought she might have lost her mind. Unfortunately, in the chaos of the attack, her fur coat, which held the letter and baby photos, was stolen. She forgot all about the child until, months later, baby Joey arrived on her doorstep, wrapped in a red bow. She later confessed, "I always dreamed of having a baby, but I couldn't even take care of myself." Still struggling with trauma, she hired help and found it hard to bond with the boy. 6 months later, she officially adopted him with her husband, proof that even through brokenness, love can endure. For a time, it seemed Connie had finally found a semblance of the family life she had always wanted. Still, cracks began to appear in the marriage as she struggled with bipolar disorder, the long-term effects of trauma, and recurring health problems. Joseph's efforts to manage her medical needs were tireless, but the emotional strain eventually became too much. They divorced in 1981 after nearly 8 years of marriage. Despite their separation, she would later acknowledge his role in helping her through her most difficult years. Her husband tried to remain by her side, but as her condition didn't improve over time, he was left with no choice but to move on. "I don't blame him," she later admitted. "I wasn't the same anymore. How long can someone sit by and watch you suffer before they walk away?" The event transformed her life. A woman who once shined on stage was now afraid to leave home. She spent days confined to bed, consumed by guilt and shame, emotions that were only made worse by her strict Catholic origins. She once said, "Italian families don't discuss trauma. We bury it." Her marriage collapsed, her career halted, her spirit fractured. Joseph still tried his best to provide support during some of the darkest periods of Connie's life. including her legal battles and her mental health crises. In 1985, Connie married TV producer Bob Parkinson, her fourth and final husband. By then, she had made several comeback attempts, and while she was no longer topping the charts, her legacy as a pop icon remained intact. The marriage, however, was brief and ill-fated. Details about their relationship remain relatively sparse, but she has described it in her memoirs as another mistake. The marriage ended in divorce just months later, and by that time, Connie had largely given up on the idea of finding lasting romantic companionship through traditional means. Throughout her life, Connie had numerous high-profile relationships outside of marriage, but none would ever lead her back to the altar. Among those rumored to have dated her at various times were singer Neil Sedaka, comedian Don Rickles, and even Elvis Presley, though the relationship with Elvis is widely believed to have been more of flirting than a full romance. Neil Sedaka reportedly had a crush on her and even wrote songs inspired by her, but nothing serious ever developed. She herself once joked that she had more engagement rings than wedding anniversaries. This was a nod to her pattern of broken relationships and romantic misfires. It's hard to fully understand Connie Francis's love life without understanding her emotional vulnerability. She was a woman of great passion and deep emotion, but also one who battled lifelong issues with depression, PTSD, and bipolar disorder. These struggles, which she bravely discussed in her memoirs and interviews, often made any intimacy difficult and relationships fragile. The incident at the New York motel in particular had profound effects on her ability to trust. It plunged her into a deep emotional and psychological crisis, resulting in years of isolation, legal battles, and mental health hospitalizations. Despite these traumas, she never completely closed herself off from love. Even in later years, she maintained friendships with past lovers, and she always left the door open to affection. Yet her story remained one of yearning for Bobby Darin, for emotional safety, for the kind of enduring love that always seemed to evade her. While her emotional and romantic life only seemed to crumble, she desperately tried to keep her career on track. But different events kept shattering any semblance of control she had on her mental health. The tragic death of her younger brother and venture into new paths. In a last-ditch effort to reclaim her life, she turned back to music, hoping it might heal her heart, or perhaps even win back her husband. She had fallen into a dark path to recovery that would be long and filled with even darker moments. Her story became a prime example of how violence can extinguish even the brightest of lights, and how society so often fails those who need compassion most. She clung to a sliver of hope in her heart, thinking, maybe if he sees me perform again, he'll love me. She truly believed that returning to the stage could restore both her broken marriage and her shattered sense of self. But fate had other plans. As she prepared for her big return, the unimaginable happened. Her voice was gone. The gift that had defined her, brought her fame, and served as her strength had abandoned her. She saw the cruel irony in it. The very thing she believed could save her had slipped through her hands, leaving her even more lost. She tried to keep her struggles hidden, even from close friends like Frank Sinatra, but that secrecy backfired. Sinatra, unaware of her condition, once asked her to sing Mama in honor of his late mother, Dolly. She declined, and later called it the hardest thing I've ever had to do. The pain of letting him down while hiding the truth only deepened her loneliness. While the trauma had initially made it difficult for her to sing and perform, the decisive event that robbed her of her voice was a nasal surgery she had undergone in 1977 to treat a nasal condition she had developed. Unfortunately, the surgery was botched, and this set her on a painful path to trying to recover what she had lost. It took several more operations and years of intensive vocal lessons for Connie Francis to slowly regain her voice. This was by no means a quick recovery, as some sources even state that it took her 4 years, while others say she was unable to sing for 7 years after the surgery. She worked diligently to recover her abilities, and eventually, she was able to return to recording and performing in the early 1980s. After years of despair, her voice slowly returned. She threw herself into music with renewed energy, experimenting with disco and singing in several languages, including Italian, Spanish, and even Japanese. Her comeback wasn't just a career move, but one rooted in personal triumph. She performed on the 30th anniversary special of American Bandstand in the very city where she had once been attacked. It was a defiant act and proof that she could still rise even from the shadows of the trauma. Sadly, trauma doesn't always stay buried. In the 1980s, new demons emerged, and this time they brought with them a depression so strong she had to undergo electroshock therapy in 1984. Drowning in grief, she attempted self-harm and fell into a coma. Miraculously, her story wasn't about to end, and she survived. The incident forced her to finally face the trauma she'd kept buried for so long. There were the mob connections in her life that she couldn't fully escape. Once, those ties had protected people like Don Rickles from violence, but they eventually brought tragedy into her life. Though she had used her connections to help others, she couldn't avoid the darker consequences. As her fame grew, so did the looming danger of her family's Mafia ties. Her brother George lived a perilous double life. He was linked to the mob while secretly acting as an informant. This was a risky kind of life, and they all knew it. Eventually, the scales tipped. One day, her father called with a tremor in his voice. "Your brother's been shot." She was shocked and terrified, perhaps even more so than when she was attacked in the hotel. She immediately asked for the hospital he had been taken to, but the most devastating reply was all she got in response. "He's dead." She screamed, her throat raw. George, the brother she adored, a brilliant lawyer by day, mob associate by night, was gone. The investigation that followed confirmed her fears. His double life had cost him everything. Later in life, she became increasingly active in American politics, particularly on the conservative side. During the 80s and 90s, she became a vocal supporter of Republican causes and candidates. Her advocacy was shaped by her personal pain, particularly that linked to her brother's death and her own assault, which led her to champion victims' rights, law enforcement, and tougher criminal justice policies. She became a familiar face at Republican conventions, performing at rallies and fundraising events. One of her most notable political moments came when she testified before Congress in support of victims' rights legislation, sharing her own story in emotional detail. Her stance aligned with the tough-on-crime message of the era. Beyond that, she was an outspoken anti-communist and a strong supporter of national defense, values that reflected her upbringing during the Cold War. She also criticized what she saw as declining morals in entertainment, lamenting the loss of the golden age of American culture. Her political activism wasn't without backlash. Some accused her of oversimplifying issues or rejected her conservative stance. Others in the industry distanced themselves. Still, she never backed down, viewing her political voice as essential to her survival. Later in life, she stepped back from public activism, but remained a powerful symbol of how personal struggle can shape political convictions. Her transformation from pop star to political advocate showed a woman who refused to be silenced. Her life was a dramatic mix of triumph and tragedy. Even Hollywood couldn't fully capture the true depth of her story. Gloria Estefan once planned to portray her in a biopic, but disagreements over the script led to the project's collapse. She obviously wanted the truth portrayed as it was, but Gloria wanted something else. The film never took off, and her extraordinary life remained untold on screen. Throughout everything, Connie Francis proved one thing, and that was, resilience isn't about never falling. It's about rising again, no matter how many times the world tries to knock you down. She had endured personal abuse, lost her voice, and suffered heartbreak. Today, when fans think of Connie Francis, they often think of the songs, sad, soaring, filled with longing. To her, those songs were not simply performances. They were extensions of her own inner life, mirrors of her deepest hopes and disappointments. Interestingly, 63 years after its release, her song, Pretty Little Baby, went viral on TikTok, making its debut on Spotify's Daily Top Songs charts, both in the USA and globally, and potentially making its way onto the Billboard Hot 100. Her career and love life were filled with both beauty and pain. In her own words, Connie once said, "I spent my whole life singing about love, but I was always chasing it, never holding on to it." Her story is one she has not shied away from telling in hopes of helping others through dark times, and is certainly not just a tale of trauma, but a portrait of resilience. She may not have found a lifelong partner, but she gave the world something equally lasting. A voice that made others feel understood in their own heartbreak, and a legacy built not on perfection, but on honesty. What do you think of Connie Francis's life battles? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video drops.